Standing by for a reacquisition of signal. And we have data from Orion. Orion out of the blackout period. Flight Dynamics reports that Orion is right on the money, coming right down the pike. A good view out of the cabin camera looking out of the upper hatch of Orion. We should be performing the skip entry maneuver momentarily. Good communications established with Orion. The second blackout period to begin about 2 minutes from now. Orion is at the apogee of the skip entry maneuver, beginning the second in a series of roll reversals, again banking maneuvers to bleed off excess inertia and to dissipate heat around the spacecraft. The start of the second blackout period, about 1 minute and 13 seconds from now, will come at an altitude of 270,000 feet, with Orion traveling about 16,400 miles an hour, range to splashdown less than 1,000 miles. Coming up on the start of the second blackout period. We should be in that second blackout period right now. Orion approaching a velocity of 20 times the speed of sound. If all goes as planned, we should be out of the blackout period with a solid lockup on the vehicle at 11:31 and 46 seconds a.m. Central Time. This is Mission Control Houston, the airborne WB-57, one of the airborne assets to track Orion's return to Earth, has visual acquisition of the vehicle. We should be coming out of this second and final blackout about 30 seconds from now. And helos flying off the deck of the USS Portland now have a visual acquisition of Orion as well, at an altitude of 174,000 feet, traveling 12,600 miles an hour, range to splashdown 288 statute miles. This view on the deck of the USS Portland. And there is a view out of the cabin camera of Orion as it continues a series of role reversals. We have data back from the spacecraft. Flight Dynamics reports Orion straight and narrow on a true course toward its splashdown site. Forward bay covered jettisoning less than 3.5 minutes from now. "150,000 feet off the ocean." Orion now traveling at Mach 10. Orion's speed now down to Mach 6. Two minutes until forward bay covered jettisoning. Orion 100,000 feet now. The spacecraft about to go subsonic. "45 seconds until forward bay covered jettisoning." Orion now at 50,000 feet. Forward bay covered jettisoning pyros are armed. 25,000 feet. Drogues have been deployed. Two good drogue shoots reported by the recovery team out in the Pacific. The descent rate is right on the money. Orion's velocity now down to 282 miles an hour. Range to splashdown 1.5 miles. 10,000 feet now. And we're on mains. 5,000 feet. Reefing in progress. Three good main shoots for Orion. We have three fully inflated main chutes. Time to splashdown 90 seconds. Perfect descent rate reported. And there it is, high over the Pacific, America's new ticket to ride to the moon and beyond now in view. Orion under its chutes descending toward splashdown. Orion in the perfect orientation for splashdown, just seconds away. (1,000 feet). Good descent rate. (500 feet). Splashdown. From Tranquility Base to Taurus Littrow to the tranquil waters of the Pacific, the latest chapter of NASA's journey to the moon comes to a close. Orion, back on Earth. Unofficial splashdown time, 11:40 and 30 seconds a.m. Central Time. At a mission elapsed time of 25 days, 10 hours, 54 minutes, 50 seconds. That's unofficial. Splashing down off the coast of Baja California. The crew module uprighting system now being inflated for the bags currently being inflated. And we have a report that Orion is stable 1, upright, the way it should be. Once again, splashdown occurring at 11:40 a.m. Central Time, 9:40 a.m. Pacific Time, west of Baja California, after a textbook entry for the Orion spacecraft bringing its 25-and-a-half-day mission to an end. Orion's recovery beacon is on. We have confirmation that 4 out of the 5 crew module uprighting system bags have fully inflated, standing by for word on the 5th one. But Orion is in great shape, stable 1, just in the orientation that had been expected. This is Mission Control Houston. Once again, the Orion spacecraft, having completed a journey of 1.4 million miles, bobbing gently in the Pacific Ocean. 4 out of its 5 crew module uprighting system bags have been deployed. We're standing by for word on the 5th. However, irrespective of that, it is in stable 1 configuration, in good shape, according to the recovery team. And we are now receiving word that all 5 of the crew module uprighting system bags are fully inflated. So that's exactly what we had hoped for. Orion safely bobbing up and down in the Pacific Ocean. This is Mission Control Houston. You're looking at the Orion spacecraft that splashed down about 6.5 minutes ago at 11:40 a.m. Central Time, 9:40 a.m. Pacific Time. We are estimating that it splashed down around 5 nautical miles away from the USS Portland. The recovery ship and Navy boats and divers will be approaching the vehicle before long. The spacecraft is in what is called a stable 1 configuration, upright, just the way we had expected it to be. 5 perfectly inflated crew module uprighting system bags, maintaining a nice gentle configuration for Orion. First of the Navy helicopters now approaching the vehicle. And here in Mission Control, some of Orion's systems no longer needed are being powered down. Many of them will stay powered up for the next 2 hours while we conduct a series of test objectives to characterize the thermal conditioning of the spacecraft. That will be important for future data for crewed missions to determine how long the crews can remain comfortable inside a vehicle returning from the moon. We also will be conducting tests of the beacon and SARSAT system for maintaining tracking of the spacecraft, for recovery forces that will be approaching the spacecraft in the future. And coming up in the next hour and a half will be the reactivation of an ammonia boiler system that will provide cooling in the spacecraft, as it will when crews return from their missions on board Orion. This is Mission Control Houston. Reports from the USS Portland indicate that the first of 2 Navy helicopters flying in the vicinity of Orion, which is about 5 nautical miles away from the ship, indicate no damage to the spacecraft and no hazardous fuel leaking from the spacecraft. A good view of the helicopters and the initial Navy boats that will be approaching Orion a short time from now. Once again, the splashdown occurring at 11:40 a.m. Central Time, 9:40 a.m. Pacific Time. This is Mission Control Houston. Orion in the Pacific Ocean, having splashed down at 11:40 a.m. Central Time, 9:40 a.m. Pacific Time, around 5 nautical miles or so from the USS Portland, a textbook entry for the vehicle. On the USS Portland at this hour, my colleague Daryl Nail from the Kennedy Space Center, who's with the Exploration Ground Systems Recovery Team. Daryl, how did it look to you? It certainly looked textbook to us here.
I'd say that's a great description, Rob. Perfectly landed here in the Pacific Ocean, and that's been confirmed by the operations manager that I just spoke to. Watching it from the deck as an observer, we have, as you can see, some broken clouds in the sky, like right around 3,000 feet. But we saw those 3 full main parachutes pop out. It was a beautiful sight, probably just about several thousand feet in the sky, and then we watched that slow descent as the Orion crew module made its way down to the Pacific Ocean. Saw the splash, and then of course the assets aboard the USS Portland here immediately started making their way towards the splashdown site, and as you see live now, they are close to being next to the capsule. Now the helicopters that you see flying there, those are MH-60s. We have 2 of them in the air, and they are right now gathering high quality, high definition imagery of the capsule in the water. There's a spotter aboard. We have photographers as well. The doors are completely open on both sides of the helicopters, and so you can see them flying at a circular track around the splashdown location. They have marked, if you can see it, you can see what looks like smoke coming off a location just to the left there. That is the boats having marked location where some of the debris has come down, the debris that was part of the separation event, part of the parachutes opening event. So you have the sabot as well as the lid from the parachutes. All of that is being tracked by the Sasquatch team, and the Navy boats are marking that with floatable smoke grenades. All of that hardware the team wants to recover because there's valuable information and data in it. The helicopters will be out for another 20 minutes gathering imagery. You can see one of them getting very close to the crew module. There is an GSS camera, ultra high definition, 8K, which is gathering imagery. We are currently on course to go right by the splashdown location, so we are right about 3.5 miles and closing. We are going to a point that's going to be 1 mile out. That's our next waypoint. 1 mile out from the splashdown location. One of the things we're waiting for is for ammonia boil off, and that's why the Navy boats are not yet next to the capsule. We're still going to wait that out. The amount of time that that's going to take is has not been determined. They have allowed for as much as 2 hours. The ammonia on the capsule is used for cooling purposes, to keep the cabin cool for crew. Of course, there's no crew in this capsule, but for future missions, it will certainly be an important part of keeping the astronauts cool during the heat of re-entry. But for now, they're going to vent off that ammonia, and as they do that, it's not quite safe to get close to the capsule with the Navy divers. So of course we'll keep our eyes fixed to the location, our cameras as well. The USS Portland standing by for our next waypoint, 1 mile from the splashdown site. And then once the completion of the ammonia boil off, the Navy boats will be going in. The spectacular sight from out here, Rob. Toss it back to you.
Thanks, Daryl. Back here in Mission Control, the entry Flight Director Judd Freeling on the left. To his left, Flight Director Rick Henfling. And with me on console here, probably none more important than the NASA Administrator, Bill Nelson. Senator, thank you for joining us today.
Rob, I'm overwhelmed. I'd say it's good to see you, but this is an extraordinary day.
I remember years ago when I saw you return on Columbia from your mission into space, and it all conjures up a tremendous amount of memories. Orion back on Earth, having circumnavigated the moon, having survived a critical test of its heat shield. I think you have to be hesitant to celebrate and throw confetti a little bit too early, but it certainly is an important achievement, is it not?
It's historic because we are now going back into space, into deep space, with a new generation. Kennedy just stunned everybody with the Apollo generation and said that we were going to achieve what we thought was impossible. And did that in a short period of time. And many things have happened since. But we knew we were going back. But we knew we were going back to the moon just to continue to explore outward into the cosmos. And so that's why this is a defining day. It is one that marks new technology, a whole new breed of astronaut, a vision for the future that captures the DNA of particularly Americans, although we do this as an international venture. And that DNA is we are adventurers, we are explorers. We always have a frontier, and that frontier is now to continue exploring the heavens.
We had to wait a while for Artemis to finally get to the point where the Space Launch System got us underway back on November 16th, but once it did, these engineers and the other members of the teams, front room, back room, they've been pretty giddy over the amount of data that they've required and how this vehicle appears to have exceeded its expectations in its performance.
The whole vehicle, the rocket, the European participation in the support module, the spacecraft itself, Orion, performing so well that they added a lot of tests. And lo and behold, we're going to be up to our ears in data, thankfully. And of course, today the two main things that had to happen was that that heat shield had to work, and it did beautifully, where they can skip off the atmosphere and bleed that speed down from 25,000 miles an hour. And then the parachutes had to work, and they did it as well.
You know, the engineering, the design of this mission, all the work that will go into the next flight when a crew is on board, right, to orbit the moon. What does this say about NASA and the international partner cooperation and the partnership that ultimately takes us not only to the moon but beyond?
Well, it says a lot about our country because we don't do it secretively. We do it openly, and we do it with our friends, and we invite all peoples of the earth. And we are doing it also with commercial partners, because when we go into orbit on Apollo 3, we are going to rendezvous and dock with in this case, SpaceX lander, and the crew will go down to the surface. And then we have another competition going on now for another lander, so that we will have two landers. And again, this is the program of going back to the moon to learn, to live, to invent, to create, in order to explore beyond.
50 years ago today, Gene Cernan, Jack Schmitt landed their lunar module Challenger on Taurus Littrow, the final lunar landing. It only seems fitting half a century later to the day, Orion back home.
And what a fitting opportunity that I had last night to sit with Jack Schmitt at the astronaut dinner and to talk to him about those experiences. 50 years, it's a long time, but look what we have done in the meantime. The space shuttle, we built the International Space Station, we brought in commercial partners. We now go to and from regularly the International Space Station with cargo and crew. Here we go. We've got scouts going to the moon that are commercial scouts that land, that take NASA instruments and scientific instruments in preparing us for the landings of our astronauts. And so it's a new day. A new day has dawned. An Artemis generation is taking us there.
And Orion continues to await the arrival of the USS Portland, which shouldn't be very much longer from now, and some flight test objectives that will be taking place over the next couple of hours before we here in Houston hand the vehicle over to the Kennedy Space Center recovery team. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, pleasure to see you today, and thank you so much for being with us.
What a day. Oh, it is my great privilege.
This is Mission Control Houston, 26 minutes after the return of Orion from its circumnavigation of the moon and a splashdown in the Pacific, a bullseye splashdown, just about 5 nautical miles away from the USS Portland, as had been planned. The Portland about to arrive near the spacecraft, as you heard from Daryl Nail, who at this moment is standing by on the Portland with the woman in charge of the recovery operations, Melissa Jones. Daryl?
Thank you, Rob. That's right. Melissa Jones, the recovery director, just came from outside the ship's control center where she was monitoring and, of course, managing her team in the midst of this recovery. So, Melissa, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is an exciting day.
What a day it is, right? We just had splashdown and want to ask you, first of all, operationally, where do we stand and what do we have to go?
So we had a picture-perfect splashdown, and at this time we're gathering data. With the CM powered up, we'll get some flight test objective data on thermal conditioning, and we're doing some signal data with the tri-band beacons, making sure that we can see the beacons on the capsules and on the astronaut suits to prepare for Artemis 2. And once that is complete, the vehicle will be powered down by the Mission Control Center, and they'll hand that over officially to us here locally in the Pacific. And then we will approach the capsule and attach some lines to it and pull it into the back of the well deck.
And that's a delicate mission, right? Because you will be attaching lines, and through the use of Navy boats and then also a winch inside the well deck and Navy sailors on the lines attached to it as well. It seems like a very delicate operation, especially getting in the well deck where waves will be sloshing around. And we've got already 4 to 5 foot seas out here in the Pacific.
Correct. So it is a delicate balance to try to control the capsule in the well deck with all the water that we have in there, and to softly land it on the cradle so that we can capture as much data from the heat shield as possible.
Now, as the capsule was coming down, just briefly tell me your reaction that moment that it splashed down.
So when they called capture from the helicopters, it was the most amazing feeling. It's just been a long time coming. We've been working this mission for a while, and we've done a ton of training. And every time you do training with a mock-up capsule, you don't have any of that. You don't have parachutes. You don't, hear it coming back through the atmosphere, the sonic booms and all of that kind of stuff. And today that actually happened. It's just amazing.
And your team, it's worth noting, has been out here a long time. From the moment of launch, you were on console, ready to support if something off-nominal happened, unusual. You were going to be able to recover that capsule wherever it was needed to recover. So you were working that and then stayed through Thanksgiving all the way to now. So it's been a long road.
It has been, yeah. Several of us supported launch, and then we deployed out here about 23 days before, and we're out here for Thanksgiving as a team. So we have been waiting for this and preparing for it for a while.
And it looks like you're doing a great job so far.
Thank you.
Good luck the rest of the way, Melissa Jones, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right, Rob?
Thank you, Daryl. We'll be back to you on the USS Portland here shortly as the post-splashdown activities and the recovery operations will continue. As mentioned earlier, it will take about 2 hours from the time of splashdown until the time that Flight Director Judd Freeling and his team of entry flight controllers here will hand the vehicle over to the Exploration Ground System Recovery Team that will work over the next several hours to bring the Orion into the well deck of the USS Portland. With me, a familiar face, Bob Cabana, NASA's Associate Administrator. Bob, it's great to see you here. And with Orion back on Earth, another milestone accomplished on the road back to putting Americans on the surface of the moon. In terms of the criticality of what we've seen over the past 4 weeks, your thoughts on how this mission evolved and now the stepping stone that would put a crew on board a couple of years from now?
Oh, Rob, it's been absolutely critical to get this mission off safely. This test flight is what we need in order to prove this vehicle so that we can fly with a crew, and that's the next step, and I can't wait. The launch, first off, I was on the roof of the Launch Control Center. I went up there with the administrator and deputy administrator when we came out of the T-minus 10-minute hold, and it was phenomenal. It was absolutely amazing. The rocket performed flawlessly, and I haven't been that happy in a long time after we came down off the roof. And then to see the mission go as well as it did, the shots that we got from the vehicle, that one from 40,000 miles away where you saw the moon with the Earth in the background. And then this morning, we've learned how to operate this vehicle. A few minor glitches along the way, but it is performed flawlessly, and we're learning how to work with it, operate it, and that's what this JSC team does. It is so great to be back here in mission control, to be with the ops team. I'm so proud of these guys. Amazing. But if you were watching this morning, I loved the video. I don't know if it was on NASA TV or not, but the moon the Earth just kept getting bigger and bigger. It was really hauling as it came in. And the preciseness with which they were able to bring it down and seeing the chutes come out, and it's just, I'm so proud of this team, the Orion team, the entire SLS, Artemis team, the folks here at JSC. It's just been amazing. I wish Gene Cernan were still alive. Here we are on the 50th anniversary, and Gene was such a proponent of getting us back to the moon. I wish he were alive to have seen this mission. It would have meant a lot to him.
I don't want to date you, but I think 24 years ago, at this moment in time, you were building a space station, I believe, with your crew on STS-88. We had so many dramatic, jaw-dropping images during the course of this flight. What for you was the most impactful moment?
Oh, I'm not sure I can pick one. Obviously, the launch. The team has worked so hard to get to the point where we successfully launched this rocket. I think the successful burns along the way to actually get that go for the TLI burn and do it and be on our way to the moon again. Absolutely awesome. I think the pictures that we saw. But the splashdown, how can you not? I mean, this was really emotional, going around and congratulating folks for what we did. So it's hard to pick just one. I think what has meant the most to me, more than just watching the mission, more than the mission highlights, is being with the teams at the Kennedy Space Center, at the Marshall Space Flight Center, here at the Johnson Space Center, and just being able to go up and talk to them and thank them for all their hard work that got us to where we are. I think it means a lot to me.
And Bob, final question. The next step, Artemis 2, putting a crew on a vehicle to orbit the moon. It's going to be a complicated mission. It's a long road. It seems like a long time from now, but based on what we've just witnessed, and based on what we believe will be the ultimate data flow out of this mission, doesn't seem that far away, does it?
It is not that far away. It's going to mean a lot when we get the crew assigned. And we see them in training. We get that human face to this. I've seen the flight hardware at KSC. The Orion 2 spacecraft for Artemis 2 is there. It's in build. We got to get Artemis 1 back and transfer some of the black boxes across to make sure that they get checked out and everything works. The rockets being built, we are on the way. And I think when you put a human face to that, when you actually see that, hey, we're sending humans to the moon again, and we're going to get this one-year cadence eventually where we're doing this on an annual basis, this is our future, and it's different from how we went during Apollo. We're going in a sustainable way. We're paving the way to go onto Mars, not just the moon and Mars, but to establish a presence in our solar system beyond our home planet, to explore, to have those technologies in space, to continue to learn and improve things here on planet Earth.
Bob Cabana, NASA's Associate Administrator. Thanks so much for being with us, Bob.
Rob, it is always a pleasure to share a mic with the voice of NASA. I think a lot of you, buddy, you know that. We've worked together a long time. You keep doing a great job.
Thank you very much, Bob. Bob Cabana, NASA's Associate Administrator, with us here in Mission Control. This is Mission Control Houston. About 37 minutes since Orion splashed down in the Pacific on the deck of the USS Portland, as he has been throughout the course of the morning. Daryl Nail, my colleague from the Kennedy Space Center. Daryl, how are things going out there? It looks like you're about to approach the vehicle.
Yeah, we're very close to that moment, Rob, here on the USS Portland. We're just about 100 miles off the coast of Baja, Mexico. The operation, as you've heard and been commentating, it is going pretty smoothly at this point. But we are in a pre-planned waiting period as we wait for the ammonia that is inside the capsule. It is used for cooling. This is boiling off at this moment into the atmosphere, and until that's complete, the boats will be on hold. Now, the Navy divers right now at this moment are outside of the 120-yard radius around the capsule. That was part of the plan. They will close within just a few feet to start detecting if there are any hazardous gases coming from the capsule. But that will only happen once our recovery director, Melissa Jones, has given them the go to close in. The ship, meanwhile, the USS Portland, is on its way to close within 2,000 yards of the capsule. As you can see it floating there. The bags fully inflated that are used to upright it. Bright orange in color at the top of the capsule. The ship will then come alongside the capsule, and once the Navy divers have gone in and made sure that the capsule is safe to approach, they will begin taking imagery, photographs both on the top side of the water, and then also they have Navy divers prepared to go underneath the capsule and take pictures of the heat shield, the all-important component of this capsule, which is the primary objective in terms of the test and this flight test, is to make sure that that heat shield works and works well. So fresh from space, they want to make sure that they have images of it preserved as it is now before the operation begins, where they pull it into the well deck of the USS Portland. That will involve the attachment of ropes as well as a winch line that then connects to the USS Portland. The well deck of the USS Portland will be flooded to about 6 feet, and those Navy boats will attach their lines and then pull alongside the Navy vessel, connect to a winch line, and then carefully tow it into the well deck. Again, we are currently awaiting the completion of ammonia boil-off from the capsule. They've allowed for up to 2 hours, but it could take a shorter period of time. And once you see those Navy boats closing in, then you'll know that that ammonia boil-off is complete. And of course, we'll let you know when that happens. Live on the deck of the USS Portland, Rob, we'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Daryl. Daryl Nail on the USS Portland out in the Pacific, west of Baja, California. Back here in Mission Control as the flight controllers watch over the initial phase of the recovery operations. We're joined by the director of the Johnson Space Center, Vanessa Weich. Vanessa, great Sunday to have you here with us on console.
Fabulous Sunday. What a great day. You know, it's amazing to me everything that has been accomplished throughout this entire mission. But being here with the team and seeing and witnessing this splashdown together, amazing, wonderful. I really can't describe how I feel.
You know, we were talking just a moment ago, it never ceases to amaze me how these missions are designed. The execution is one thing, but the design of the mission here by the flight control team, and just down the hall, by the way, there are humans orbiting the Earth and the International Space Station, so it's almost like a 2-for-1 here.
It is. I mean, you know, to me this week, and well, for the past 26 days, being able to come into the control center and know that we had teams controlling the International Space Station with our crew members on board, and we've had, as you know, successfully crews living off of this planet for over 22 years, but then in another control center where we're monitoring and making sure that the maneuvers, everything that had to happen on the Orion spacecraft, that was being tracked, followed, and, you know, data, anything that needed to be sent up was just done so perfectly and professionally. This team has trained for years. First, you got to plan the mission, as you know. Then you have to execute the mission. And so the years of planning, the years of getting ready, the preparations really paid off.
You know, after a team wins the World Series like the Astros did, you can celebrate for about 24 hours before you have to worry about spring training that's coming up. There's almost never a moment to breathe. Artemis 2, not too far down the pike.
Yes, absolutely. So for us, you know, this is great. We've accomplished Orion 1, this test flight, being able to test out the heat shields, those parachutes, as you saw, brought the spacecraft down. But now we have to get it ready for our crews to be on board. So all of the systems that we need to integrate for our environmental controls, those are things that will be new as we go forward for Artemis 2. And then it's the outfitting of the cabin. All the things, simple things you think about, if they're going to be going for 10 days. So we got to make sure that we have the food, we have the clothing, all of the things that they're going to need for their next trip. But there's a lot of additional training, there's a lot of additional planning that has to happen in order for us to be ready for Artemis 2.
Thank you so much. Vanessa Weich, the director of the Johnson Space Center. What a busy time this has been.
Oh, but I also, Rob, though, I want to say thank you and congratulations to all of the employees, our entire workforce here at NASA Johnson Space Center. But I also want to thank our European partners. I want to thank our industry partners. It took thousands of people to make this possible, and now the recovery that's being done by the Navy. Just want to say major thank you to the brave individuals that are out, and they're going to be bringing the Orion spacecraft into the Portland, and then she'll be back going to Florida, and my friends in Florida are ready to receive her. We're super excited, and just want to say thank you to everyone that has made this possible.
Thank you so much, Vanessa Weich, director of the Johnson Space Center. Time to celebrate just a little bit before we catch our breath and press on.
Yes, time to celebrate. Then we got to get ready for Artemis too.
Vanessa Weich, thank you so much. Back here in Mission Control, it has now been 46 minutes since the splashdown of the Orion spacecraft to complete its 25-and-a-half-day mission. Flight controllers here in Houston are reporting that the vehicle looks great. In the initial visual inspections being made by the helicopter teams, as you heard Daryl Nail reference just a short time ago. We just heard from Vanessa Weich, the Johnson Space Center director. Now let's turn our attention to the East Coast, to the Kennedy Space Center, where the director of the Kennedy Space Center, Janet Petro, is standing by with us. Janet, good afternoon, and what a moment as your exploration ground systems folks are hard at work out in the Pacific.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rob. It's been a really, really exciting morning, and can't wait for our teams to get to work out there on the West Coast.
You know, we heard a short time ago from Melissa Jones from the deck of the USS Portland. How complicated has been the development of this recovery operation that your team is executing as we speak?
Well, it's pretty complicated, but you know, our teams make it look easy. I will start out by saying, or giving, I should say, a big shout out to really Vanessa and her flight ops team and the whole Orion team to deliver an amazing mission, bringing us down through splashdown. But now it's over to Melissa and her team, and she's done an incredible amount of work to get to this point. You know, what we do at NASA, it really is all about collaborations, and the collaborations that we've had with the Department of Defense in particular over the past many years, their hard work and their dedication as they went through a great deal of planning, hardware development and processes, and a lot of practicing to get to this point and make it look easy. You know, that capsule sitting out there on the ocean, it looks very similar to the Apollo capsule, but it's actually about 30% larger. And so the complexity of recovering that larger vehicle is a little bit more. But Melissa and her team have been practicing, you know, their latest underway recovery test. They completed, it was the 9th one, and they completed that last November 21st of last year, 2021. So they're ready. watching these teams precisely perform these recovery operations is amazing. And so I think we're going to have a really, really great day. I'm going to be traveling to San Diego to watch the ship come in port in a couple days. So I look forward to seeing that capsule on board the well-deck ship.
Janet, there's a lot of work to be done before Artemis 2, but the first milestone here will be getting the vehicle back to your center in Florida for a detailed inspection and detailed analysis. What's the basic timeline for all of that work?
Yeah, so splashdown today is really the beginning of the journey back to KSC. So as I mentioned, I'll be there in San Diego when the ship comes into port in a couple of days. And then Orion will then be loaded onto a truck and transported back to the Kennedy Space Center. And that's going to take a couple of days because of road-related conditions. You know, the Orion will still have some residual hazardous waste on it. And of course, planning the roadways as it gets trucked back to the Kennedy Space Center takes some careful navigation. So by the end of this month, the end of December, we expect to have Orion coming back onto our center. We think that's going to be a really great Christmas present for us here at the Kennedy Space Center. And it'll go right into our multi-payload processing facility for its post-flight assessment. And that's where the remaining residual hazardous fluids will be removed from it. And then just after the new year, the teams will be opening up the hatch of the Orion. And then once that's complete, I think Rob, you called it the moment of truth. They'll remove that heat shield and begin a really detailed inspection an assessment of how that heat shield performed during its reentry and recovery operation. So we're really looking forward. I know the whole team's really looking forward to see how that assessment comes out. And then after that, it's Orion's journey is not done. It'll be making its way up to the Glenn Research Center, where it will be doing some acoustic and further environmental testing up at that center. So journey isn't over. It's just kind of making its way here on the terrestrial path back. So thanks.
Janet Petro, the director of the Kennedy Space Center, joining us here today. Congratulations, Janet, and thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Rob. It's a great capstone to our 60th diamond anniversary to have splashdown, successful splashdown. So take care. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you again, Janet Petro, the director of the Kennedy Space Center, joining us today. Orion safely upright in stable 1 as the Navy and Exploration Ground Systems team continue to approach the vehicle in the first of a multi-hour choreography that will bring the vehicle into the well deck of the USS Portland. On the deck of the USS Portland right now is Darrell Nail, who has NASA astronaut Shannon Walker with him once again, post-splashdown this time. Darrell, how are things going out there?
Rob, we've got a front row seat to this operation. As you can see behind me, Shannon Walker, as you mentioned, NASA astronaut, joining me with this incredible view as we watch that capsule floating in the Pacific Ocean just 100 miles off of Baja, Mexico. We have an MH-60 Nighthawk helicopter encircling it and the Navy boats in the water. First of all, Shannon, how about this view?
It is an amazing view and so exciting to see the Orion capsule back on Earth.
That is a human-rated capsule that went around the moon and returned and is now in the Pacific Ocean. As an astronaut, what kind of thoughts do you have seeing a moment like this?
Well, it's actually really emotional to see something like this, knowing that the next time we're going to have people on that capsule or the second Orion capsule. It's pretty amazing that we're going to be able to go back to the moon soon.
Incredible indeed. And as we look at, let's paint the picture for the audience as we look out at this operation. Currently in a moment where we are pausing for ammonia boil-off. That's the cooling that the Orion crew module uses to keep the astronauts cool inside the cabin as they wait to be taken out of the capsule. There's none in this one, but this would be a period in which that would happen. You can see the Navy boats. They are roughly outside of 120 yards from the capsule. They have equipment that will sniff out any hazardous gases near the Orion. And so they are holding in position until that ammonia boil-off happens. And then also in your view, you can see the MH60 circling back around. It is leaning so the photographers inside and a high-resolution camera mounted on the side can get imagery of the capsule fresh from space. My question to you, Shannon, is as we watch this continue to wait and for the Navy divers to get closer, thoughts of Artemis 2 now come to mind. You've heard folks have been talking about it. Rob has been discussing it with many of the leadership around NASA. People want to know, well, who are the astronauts going to be for Astronaut 2?
Yeah.
So, any idea?
That is the question. No, I have no idea. Once we get this capsule back, we'll look it over and we'll be able to determine when Artemis 2 will actually be able to launch. And once we know that launch date, we'll figure out the right time to name the crew based on the training flow.
So there's actually a period of training in which you have to do a set amount of time to get ready for that, but really predicated on Artemis 2 and that launch date?
Absolutely. We don't want to have the crew just spinning their wheels if Artemis 2 is going to be a long way out, but I don't think it will be, so I would say sometime in the next 6 months maybe. Is it just a guess? Don't hold me to it. We might be naming the crew. All
right, very good. Shannon Walker, NASA astronaut, thanks for joining us today. One quick update and note, the recovery team was looking at the possibility of recovering the parachutes as well as the forward bay cover, but that is not going to happen this time. They did mark their locations, but they did slip below the surface of the ocean, and so no recovery of the parachutes or the forward bay cover. That's it from right here on the USS Portland. Rob, we'll send it back to you.
Daryl Nail on the deck of the USS Portland with NASA astronaut Shannon Walker. It's been almost an hour since Orion splashed down. Everything with the entry and splashdown went by the book. If you weren't with us for the final minutes of Orion's descent toward the Pacific Ocean, we have a replay after the deployment of the three main chutes, which were pulled out in sequential fashion after pilot parachutes and drogue chutes were deployed. The main chutes came out. They reefed in perfect fashion. Slowly descending towards the splashdown that was marked at 11:40 a.m. Central Time, 9:40 a.m. Pacific Time, at a point about 5 nautical miles or so from the USS Portland, west of Baja California. Orion entered the Earth's atmosphere traveling 25 times the speed of sound. It decelerated to a splashdown velocity of just under 100 miles an hour. It was a very gentle splashdown for Orion. All of its entry milestones were performed in perfect fashion. 2 blackout periods in which the plasma around Orion built up, preventing data and communications with the spacecraft as a natural function of the heat of re-entry, which was about 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, twice as much as re-entering space shuttles and other crewed vehicles have experienced. But although some analysis must be performed now, and there's the splashdown itself as it occurred, analysis, as you'll hear in a moment from our next guest, must be conducted to make sure that everything went as had been prescribed on the heat shield particularly. And there's a live view of Orion as the Navy boats with the Navy divers and other recovery personnel begin to approach the spacecraft. With us here in Mission Control is Michelle Zahner, the Orion Mission Planning Lead from the Vehicle Integration Office. Michelle, thank you for joining us today. And I guess the natural and the big question is, unbelievable that all this just ticked off in trip hammer fashion the way it was designed.
Yes, Yes, it was an incredible mission. So we accomplished all of our major mission objectives. The vehicle performed every bit as well as we hoped, and even better in a lot of ways. So as an example, the solar rays generated more power throughout the flight than we expected. So this is the furthest any human-rated spacecraft has ever gone, and that required a lot of complex analysis and mission planning and trajectory planning ahead of the mission, and to see it all come together and have such a successful test mission was amazing.
Michelle, it was a test flight, of course. There was a lot of risk involved, an elevated risk because there was no crew on board, and you could take, I shouldn't say liberties, but you could expand the envelope of what you needed to do in order to acquire the data that you were looking for in order to set the stage for the next mission when a crew will be on board. From a vehicle standpoint, sitting in these mission management teams, sitting with your engineers on a day-to-day basis, how much data did you acquire, and how long do you think it's going to take to pore over this so you write the textbook of Artemis 1?
Yeah, we acquired a ton of data during the mission. So one of the first things that we'll do post-mission is take several months to go back through that data, really dissect it, and understand the vehicle performance. You know, we did a lot of testing and analysis prior to the mission, but nothing really compares to seeing the vehicle perform in the harsh space environment. So that's certainly going to be our first focus after the mission is looking at all that data. And as you mentioned, you know, we pushed the vehicle further than we probably would with the crew on board, but through that, we learned a lot. We learned that the vehicle is more robust than we thought in many areas. And so taking that information and expanding our operational envelope will help as we go forward to more complex missions in the future.
And in the Orion Vehicle Integration Office, for yourself and your colleagues, it's almost like wearing two hats. You have to go back and pore over the data from this flight, but now you got to prepare a vehicle that will sustain a crew, including an environmental control system, a life support system for the crew itself. How are you all going to juggle all of this work over the next couple of years?
Yeah, there is a lot of work that goes on in parallel. So as I mentioned, I think the post-flight review is going to be the top priority for the first few months. But at the same time, the crew module and the European service module for Artemis 2 is already at Kennedy Space Center. It's already being put through the paces in testing. So that vehicle is already there. After splashdown here, there are some avionics that we're going to take off of the Artemis 1 crew module, refurbish, and then install in the Artemis 2 crew module. And then, as you mentioned, we have the new environmental control and life support systems and a lot of other crew interfaces like crew displays, and all of that is in the process of being integrated and tested. So we celebrate Artemis 1 today, but tomorrow we get back to work and we start focusing heavily on Artemis 2 and making sure we have a successful first crewed mission.
You're going to have to delay those vacation plans just a little bit. Michelle Zahner from the Orion Vehicle Integration Office, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Back here in Mission Control, about an hour and 2 minutes now since the splashdown of Orion. Just about 5 nautical miles away from the USS Portland, which is approaching the vehicle, as well as Navy recovery teams. Back on the USS Portland, Daryl Nail from the Kennedy Space Center with the Exploration Ground Systems folks is with Captain John Ryan, the commanding officer of the vessel. Daryl?
Thanks, Rob, and Captain John Ryan here. Thanks for making the time to come and join us from off the bridge.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you being here. So far, this has been pretty amazing in terms of the completion of the mission. From your vantage point, how did you see it, and what are you seeing now?
Right now we have the orbital is in the water. Right now we're kind of in that 2 to 3 hour window where NASA and the Navy's EOD teams are conducting some tests. We're getting imagery and data for NASA, which will help support the future astronaut missions. And from perspective, honestly, I think this is one of the coolest things I've ever gotten to do. I've been in the Navy 23 years. I've done a lot of missions and I've been all over the world, but to be part of this NASA mission today is probably one of the coolest things I've ever been part of.
That's impressive, and that says a lot. As we look just behind us, Captain Ryan, and we see the operation currently in a moment of pause where they're waiting for the capsule to vent off the rest of its ammonia using its cooling system. We can see the Navy boats in the water. Currently, you've got the ship on a course heading going around this operation. What has been your instruction to your team commanding the ship?
So I just basically wanted to keep the ship within visual distance of the orbital and our teams in case they need anything. It also is providing, let's be honest, a lot of people are out here and they're super excited about this. Let's provide visual opportunities for people to get photos and get their digital part of being the history of this event. So, a lot of time and effort and training and years of work went into this. So I want everybody to kind of get their moment, and we're out here getting ready to, we'll be landing the helicopter soon and, just being a part of it.
Certainly watching the sailors as it splashed down, they seem to really enjoy the completion of the splashdown part of the mission. You can see they're all smiles, cameras, and so that was good. You provided us with a perfect view of the rest of the operation. I want to talk a little bit about your ship, the USS Portland, and why it was chosen for this particular mission, and what strengths does it bring to this operation?
So the USS Portland is one of the newest of the San Antonio class LPDs. So
an LPD?
Landing platform docking ship. So this type of ship, normally known as an amphibious ship, in most of our missions we'd be working with the Marine Corps to embark their equipment and deliver them to foreign shores. But the capabilities of our ship can also be used, obviously, for missions like this. We have an enormous flight deck with an aviation department that we can land multiple various types of aircraft. We can put, obviously, a number of small boats in the water. And then probably the special feature, which NASA really likes, is we have a well deck, which we can later flood, and we will bring the orbital into the well deck to transport it back to San Diego.
Those are some great assets that you bring to the operation, and I also know on the next one, in Artemis 2, it'll be a critical component. The medical facilities that you have on board here, you could take care of somebody with any number of injuries, and in fact, I believe even have surgery if you need it.
Yes, we have a tremendous medical capability on board. Hopefully not that it will be needed, but we do have a operating room, medical staff, and a lot of ability to take care of personnel should anything not work out as designed.
This ship was just recently in Los Angeles at Fleet Week earlier this year.
Yes.
Got to show it off to the public, and that's a matter of pride, I imagine, for the team.
Absolutely. The ship has had a very busy year. The ship returned from an overseas deployment much earlier in the year, supported Los Angeles Fleet Week and also the Rim of the Pacific exercise this summer, which had about 20 nations participating. So it's been a very busy year for the ship, and I think this is really just kind of the cherry on top where you get to do an unusual mission and support history.
Tell me about the footprint that NASA takes up on this boat. I'm sure I haven't seen all of it. I've seen a lot of it, the well deck, certainly the equipment that we have running on the various decks outside and inside. It's pretty sizable.
Yes, this is a very good sized ship. We have plenty of room. NASA has about 150 engineers and various entities on board, which we have plenty of room for. This ship would normally deploy with upwards of 600 Marines on board, so NASA's footprint really isn't too bad. It's well within our capabilities.
Well, there's been plenty of room, and you've been a tremendous host to us, and so thank you, Captain John Ryan, for having us and for successfully bringing us to this part and this moment of the operation.
It's been an honor to support the NASA engineers and to be out there and be part of this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Captain John Ryan, the commanding officer of the USS Portland. And as we push out our view here in the Pacific Ocean, just 100 miles off the Baja Peninsula, you can see Orion now as a silhouette, still floating, the Orion command module. with its CMIS bags. Those are the uprighting bags, fully deployed. It's in a stable condition. And to the right of that, you see the first Navy boat. That's a rigid hull boat. That one is the one that's going to get a little closer and provide a stabilizing tow line once it's been determined that the Navy boats can get a little closer. As we pan just to the right of that, you will see the remaining 4 boats. 2 of those boats are inflatable boats with Navy sailors aboard. Those Navy sailors will